Let me hit mute. And 3, 2, 1, action. Like I said, 3, 2, 1, action. And give me a big round of applause, everybody. And the crowd roars. I can't find my applaud button really fast. But, well, good morning, everybody. And welcome. We're going to have a couple things that I want to show off to you today. Some will be a recap for some. We've mentioned this in some of the classes. And some people don't realize that it's on their instrument. It is. But this format actually started years ago. One of the features that I'm going to talk about today, which is something you use a lot. And then the other, I had another question about an MCS Plus. So if I have time, I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I want to talk a little bit about the Fake It feature that I just did there and how you can use that. Because every time I ask the question, how many of you have a Fake It button, anyone that raises their hand, that has it raises their hand, and then I ask how many of you use it a lot, and a lot of hands go down. And I think it's a
Robert,
commonly
we seem
misunderstood
to have lost
feature.
audio.
So with that said, I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about something that you are all familiar with, and that is called presets or setups. Now, you might have seen this chart in the class. Let me pull it up on the screen share here. You may have seen this in numerous classes. I actually taught this on the EX class back on June 1st. I taught it, well, I didn't say the whole class was about this. I touched on it in the A series class. And then I also we touched on it in some of the virtual classes as well. So, having said that, I want to touch on it again a little bit because I've had a lot of questions about, does this pertain to my instrument? Doesn't. And the answer is yes, 90% of the time. Okay, so you could probably see this chart. If I'm not mistaken, you're looking at a chart that should say, and let's see, I see Dinah and Fred on my screen. Just a nod of your head. Can you see that okay? All right, so it's clear. All right. So this is a chart that you may have seen a few times, and I sent it out an email. And this is a very useful chart to have, and it does work very similarly on the EY series. Okay? Now, I'm going to come back to the screen share in a minute, but I'm going to come back to the instrument now. And what you're going to notice is I'm squished. There we go. All right. So all of you, if you have a Fanfare, Journey, Inspire, Rialto, and for that matter, anybody has these preset buttons in the instrument. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, he keeps saying the word presets, presets, presets. That's because they're actually called setups. And that's because I keep using the word presets. Let me back up. They're setups. I use the word preset. If you ever hear us say the word preset or setup, they're both in the function of how it works, but they work a little differently depending on the model that you're sitting at. For many years, Lowrey, back in the days of, I want to say 1990 for sure, when Lowrey introduced their first models that had this option, they were called presets, and they were actually built between the keyboards. You get a little history lesson here. And they put it there because as you're playing, I think they thought if you're playing, it'd be easy to hit a preset in between the keys. The problem is that worked well for many, and then there was a bunch of people that said when they're playing, they accidentally bumped it. And it would cause it to turn on the church organ, seemed to be right here, number 2. And then when the church organ comes on and you're playing a pretty ballad and this big pipe organ comes on, it doesn't help matters when you're on a pretty setup with piano and strings. So they moved them up here, but anyway, they called them presets, and for many years they called them preset. And what would happen is every time we do a class, when someone first got an instrument that had presets, they go, what is a preset? We would answer the question by starting off by saying what a preset does is it sets up the instrument to do, and then we would explain it. So I think what happened over the years is Lowrey heard the word setup so much, they said, well, maybe we should just call it setup. You can tell that I've been around presets so long because I may inadvertently say, I may just, without even thinking about it, say preset, 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 but I'm referring to the same thing. However, there is a difference between a preset and a style set, a preset and a setup, depending on the model of instrument you have, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Luckily, most of you have the E series, has what's called the new setups, and then some of you have what's called the vintage setups, which would be formerly the presets. All right. Now I know it sounds like a lot of things going back. It sounds redundant, but we'll explain in a minute. So what happened was, for many years, Lowrey on their higher end models had 10 presets. Then they moved them up here, and it was the same thing. And those 10 presets had 10 what they call general setups. All right. Now, what general setups is if you turn on the instrument and you don't press any button whatsoever and you just go through, the general setups, or general presets as it used to be called, had a particular sound there that was always the same. So for example, when I turn on this instrument and I press 1, I get what's called just a rich organ sound. 2 is a pipe organ church. 3 is a theater. Whew, that's robust. 4 is strings, chimes, vocals on number 7. Okay, 8 is piano and strings, 9 is a jazz organ, and 10 is what they call the mellow big band, which was reminiscent of the Glenn Miller sound. Now those are the general setups. So for many years, Lowrey kept that same system on all of the models. Then when the newer EZs and EYs came out, They changed the functionality of some of those setups, and then when the Inspire and the Rialto was introduced, they kept them the same. So if I turn on the instrument and I don't press a button and anything else, and I just go through those, you'll get what's called general setups. Now, a lot of you have, let me step back. If you have a Fanfare, Journey, Inspire, Rialto, which is what this class is for, you all have a style setup button. Some of you have, there may be some participants today that have the SUs or the A series, and that's fine. It's called Rhythm Preset. But there is a little bit of difference in how they work, even though, or what they do, even though the operation works the same. So it's real simple, and many of you know this already, but when you put on a style, and you pick, right now it says Dixieland, okay? The style setup has turned red. Now, if I turn off a rhythm, it's back into yellow. All that means is that it's on standby. And so, if I pick a style, in this case Dixieland, style setup turns red. So all that means is that now I have a setup just for Dixieland. So in this case, all right, now that's that setup. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push number 1, and it's going to give me another setup for that style. Number 2. And so forth. But I don't know if you noticed, listen to number 3 again. Number 4. Let's go to number 7. So you heard some of those sounds. Now, before style setups, like I told you, they were called presets. And what Lowrey did is if you had an instrument that had more than, you had what's called rhythm presets 1 through 10, what you got, let me pull the screen up, here's what would happen. So what you see there is a road map. Okay, so when someone put on Bossa Nova and they had rhythm preset, whenever they press rhythm preset in number 1, it would make that setting what they call an easy arrangement. And in other words, the background, the band would be really streamlined. Instead of having all the band members, you may have just a drummer, a bass, and maybe a guitar sound. 2 is very similar in nature, but it was just a tad bit more. And it says it right there, just a little more, just like it says, a little more on both keyboards. And it might have given you just a slightly stronger sound. 3 was always an organ type sound. Sometimes it might have been a jazz organ, a full organ. String or strum. If you notice there, it says guitars, banjos, orchestral. String or strum means any instrument that's string related that will work with that style of music. Bells and whistles, happy and fun sounds. A lot of times you'll hear vibraphones. Solo instrument is just what it is. Solo is kind of interesting because solo can quite often be, it could be a saxophone, it could be a piano, and well, sometimes there's some overlapping here. So sometimes a solo instrument could also be, as you can see in number 8, a piano. But the way they set it up is not a solo instrument, meaning the button that says solo, but an instrument that would typically be found in a song that they would do a solo. Maybe a piano, for example, could be played as a solo. And then a vocal type sound on number 7. Piano, a lot of times it says piano, but it's not always just piano. I've often referred to it as piano or percussion. Because, for example, xylophones, that's a percussion sound. Vibraphones is also percussion. Any instrument that has a percussion type of sound. Now, piano is one of those instruments that's often a debate because it's considered a percussion instrument, but it has strings in it, so it's actually both. Ensembles, you get these fuller sounds, but full ensembles, you traditionally, not all the time, but a large percentage, you will often hear a harmony. And then 10 is always, it says big, and finale, it means big. Now, let's translate that into this for style setups. So, what you just saw on that chart there was the roadmap on Lowrey organs since 2001 on an instrument called the Royale, which was what they called the SU series. The SU series was the first to introduce that concept. And what happened was, in the screen, those models that had the screen, and if they didn't and they had this handy, a player could play along, and as they're playing, they could look in the screen, and they could see that, boy, if I pushed while I'm playing, if I push number 4, I know I'm going to get a string instrument. Now, what kind of string instrument would you get? Well, we don't know until you press it, okay? Or maybe when I'm done playing, I want to finish up with some big. Okay. Having said that, as the E series was introduced and they changed the wording to setup, they kept that same roadmap. So I'm going to put on that style that I just had on. And when I say they changed the roadmap, they kept the same roadmap, I'm going to say 98% of the time, because I haven't been through every preset. But if you put style setup on and Dixieland, here's the initial setup on 0. Okay, and I'm going to just tease it back here. Now, 3 said organ. Now, when I touch 3, this is what I get. Okay, now you notice that was an organ sound. Now listen closely to number 4. Number 4 said, let's pull it up on the screen here. It said a string or strumming type instrument. Well, here's 4. It actually has a touch of organ sound in there, but did you notice the hint of strings in there? It had strings. So a lot of times you'll get a blend, but it will still give you that type of sound in there. Number 7 said vocal. Let's listen. Number 10 said finale. Actually, let's see what happens on number 8. See if it still follows the roadmap. It said piano or percussion. Now, there was a case where it did not follow that roadmap. So far, as I was looking at these, 8 out of the 10 follow that roadmap. Let's see what number 10 does. Now 10 said finale. That's finale. That's a big sound. Now, so as the previous models were introduced, prior to the EYs, that was the roadmap they used. And when the new EZs and the EYs were introduced, about, I want to say 95% of the time, if I had to come up with a number, that roadmap is very similar. So if you notice, the 4 or 5 sounds that I did followed that. Now, having said that, there are some of you who have the Inspire or Rialto. That's the EY 400 or I don't know what the actual number is. I always just call it a Rialto. It's an EY 4 something A or whatever the actual model number is. Those models, for those of you who have that, you have this vintage button. And obviously, if you have the EX, if you happen to have an EX and you're on today, you also have the vintage. So here's what vintage means. Vintage means what I mentioned earlier. Lowry used to call them rhythm presets. And so what they did is they put this vintage button, and when you press it, it's basically like a style setup, but it's another button that works like it, and it gives me an additional 11 setups, and these setups are very reminiscent. In fact, they're very close to the presets that those S, U, and A models had before. And the reason for that is simple. When you get into an instrument like an Inspire or Rialto, most people that get into these models either come from a Fanfare Journey or they've come from an A series model, like a Prestige, Sterling, Legend, Floridian, those models. And when you're in that class of an instrument and you're used to using rhythm preset so many times, Lowry figured we would get attached to those. And quite frankly, I've gotten attached to those setups, presets, many times. And in fact, there's some that I knew when I put Frank in the Count rhythm preset number 6, I always knew what sound I was going to get. I got that trumpet that I liked. And so what they did is they made sure that if anybody had that those instruments and they push vintage, it's like pushing rhythm preset and getting all of those presets, but they're called setups now, from those models. And that roadmap that you see there is the roadmap that worked on all those models, and so they still work on this instrument. So I'm gonna say 99.76372% that the vintage, formerly called rhythm preset, is going to be the same as that roadmap, and I would say about 95.0763% that if you use just the style setup, that you'll get those similar. And occasionally it's not exactly, but you have a pretty good idea of that. Now you're probably wondering, how did I come up with those exact percentages? Well, I don't know. I just made it up. But it's pretty close to that. You get the point. Now, before I continue on this topic here, because there's something that's next. Is there any questions? We have any raised hands, or do you need to raise your hand? Questions? Now's a good time. Speak now, raise now, or forever hold your peace.
I don't see any hands raised.
Wow.
Oh, here's one.
Okay.
HTTPS, mobilize. Go ahead, unmute yourself. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. The Journey has 8 presets or setups.
Yes.
What's different? What's missing from the chart?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because on the Journeys and I think the Fanfare also has 8. Mm-hmm. And that roadmap is still very similar. However, and this might just be a fun little exercise to do, what I've noticed, you would think that if you looked at that chart there, and Joni may be able to help me out with this, because I've noticed it doesn't follow this map exactly. You would think, well, I don't have 9 and 10. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Because there are only 8, I've noticed that on the Fanfare and the Journey that sometimes they'll put the finale on number 8 instead. Or they'll put They might put, for example, you may have a rhythm style that you're playing, and you get to 7 and you get a vocal sound, and then you get to 8, instead of a piano, you might get a big sound. So a lot of times what they've done is they've condensed some of these setups so that, for example, on the Easy series, number 5 will sometimes do a vocal on the top and a chimes on the bottom. So that what they did is they combined 2 presets, a one on the top, one on the bottom. So what you'll notice is the first 4 will more than likely be very similar to what that chart says. 5 sometimes, but what you'll notice is sometimes you have to go to the bottom keyboard and they'll do some of those on the top and the bottom. Does that make sense? So 5 may be, for example, it may be a vibraphone, and on the bottom keyboard they may put a piano sound. Does that sound about right, Joni, in your experience?
Yes, yes.
So sometimes I'll go to number 8 because I have it in my head. 8 is piano, and then I get a big sound. That's very common. In fact, I think would be a fun little exercise for the Fanfare Joni earners is put on style setup number 8 and just go through a lot of the rhythms and listen to the sound. If it's big, you're going to notice that they replaced 8 with a big sound on top. But then go to the bottom right. You may find another setting down there that's either 7 or 8 or 9 on that chart. But I would definitely still have that chart handy. So, and I've emailed it. We've talked about it. And some people have questioned, is this for my model or not? That's why I said it's never 100%, but it's pretty close to that. Good question. Someone's raising their hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, Judy Bram.
Hi, Judy Bram.
How you doing? I have, obviously they have the Aria, and you went over the vintage, you have the normal. When you press the 2 buttons together, is that 10 times 33 times? I mean, how many are we talking about here?
Yeah, so, and I did touch on this for the Aria owners a few weeks back. So
yes,
for those of you if you happen to have that bigger one, the marquee and what have you, if you have 2 together, that just gives you what's called an organ style setup. So basically, and I'm recording this, let me change my view so you see this if you go back and watch this. So basically, everyone that has an E series instrument has a style setup. Everybody. That means EZ, EY, EX. Some people have 5. Those are particularly the EZ's owners. So you, in that case, you have style setup 0, 1 through 5 would be 6 style setups for every rhythm. Some of you have 8, as we just we're talking about. So the same thing applies. And then for you Inspire and Rialto owners, you have style setup 1 through 10, so that's 11. And then if you push the vintage, you get an additional 11. So that's 22 setups for every style that you press. And then for those who have the EX, you have your button is over here, and it says style setup vintage, and then if you push the 2 together, it gives you what's called an organ style setup, and that's an additional 11, so it's 33 in that case. Now keep in mind, everything that I'm saying is the number of setups per rhythm. So I said easy owners have style setup 1 through 5, and I shouldn't say all easy owners. Let me correct myself. Easy 10 owners on up. Easy 10 owners have style setup 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus the 1. That's 6 setups on the top and the bottom keyboard for every style. So if on their panel they have, I think it's, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Joni, you have 6 styles times 2, or wait. Yes. So there's 12 categories here.
Right.
And then there's pianist, full band, and orchestra. So there's 36 styles. So that instrument that I just mentioned has 36 styles times 6 setups. You have 6 setups for every style. On the Fanfare, the Journey it goes to 72 styles on the fanfare. You have 8 plus the 0, that's 9. So that's 9 style setups for 72 rhythms. Well, mathematically, that adds up to a lot of presets or setups. You'll hear me say that a lot. I'll slip on that.
Yeah.
Then if you have the 10, that means you're 11 times. And those models, for those of you who have 11, that would be the Inspire. Joni, how many does Inspire have? 286?
Oh, dear.
286. I know that because I just looked it up for someone. So that's 286 setups times 11. Then if you have the Vintage, that's 286 times 22. And then on Rialto, there's more styles, and I forget how many more. So, and then the EX, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what that represents. So the reason for that, if you do the math in your head, even the smallest one with the Easy, that's 6 times 36. That's a lot of presets.
Mm-hmm.
And to know what all those presets do in advance is a little challenging. So that's why we like to feed this chart to people, because most of the time you'll get a lot of these setups. Now, there is another thing that some of you have. You can say, well, I look at my screen, like on the EY 300, the Fanfare, the Journey, the Easies, in the screen, when you're playing, it'll give you, I don't know if you could see it. Oh, give me a Let's see how close I can get here. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Yeah, probably not that good. I probably should have found this chart, but you can kind of see right here in the screen all of the models that I just mentioned. Easies, EYs, EXs. In the screen, on your home screen, when you put on a rhythm style and you're in your home screen, it'll always tell you the sound that's in the top and the bottom. So you may not be able to visually see it in the screen, but you can kind of see there's something written here. And what it says is Dixie trumpet / sax. So that's nice to have when you're playing. However, if while I'm let me put on style. Well, we'll just leave it there. While I'm playing, if I want to go to number 6,
Able to unmute myself, though.
But that's it, though, but you can't hear.
when you go to number 6, oh, someone's barking. They must like what I'm saying. When I go to number 6, what sound am I going to get before I get there? Well, if you're looking in the screen there, I won't know if you're using this because I won't know until I press it. And it says Clyde's wah and trumpet. What if I don't want that sound? So that's why I like to have that chart. Now, some of you are saying, well, wait a second. I have the screen where it actually tells me.
Look at all the, like, picking the organ.
Hey, Justin, can you give me a hand? I'm going to slide my organ out here so I can get a little closer up. So give me, just slide it that direction. Okay, that's good. Okay, now I don't know if this can be seen. And we're going to dim the lights. Now, if you have an instrument like this, you know this. No, the other one in the back. We're going to turn the lights off in the store. Oh, well, that didn't make it any better. It made it worse. Okay, well, I'll just have to read to you. Go ahead and turn it back on. So when you use what's called what used to be called preset information is now called style setup information. So in the screen, it's actually telling me Dixie trumpet / sax, clarinet / sax flugelhorn, breathy sax / scat, calliope / kazoo, etc., etc. So this is handy because it's telling you specifically in advance what setups you're getting. I like to have both in my possession. Both meaning both options of what sounds. So when I'm playing, because I don't always have the screen up, I may have something else going on in here. I may have a different sound. And while I'm playing, I may say to myself, I want a piano sound. Well, since 2001, how many years is that? It's a lot of years. After using that roadmap, I know if I go number 8, more than likely I'm going to get a piano sound. If I go to 6, I know I'm going to get a solo sound. So sometimes I don't always have the screen up, and I have the home screen up. So that's why I shared that chart with you. Okay? So the point is I'm trying to give you as much information that you can make it work for you. So between the chart, using your screen, or using what's called the preset info, so on the bottom left here, there it is, this custom button number 3, when you press it, pulls up the screen and it will show you all of those sounds. So for those of you who have that, you'll at least know before you get what sound you're going to use. And if you don't, having that other roadmap kind of helps. Sometimes what I've done is put it on a little index card for the students and told them to place it on their music rack or off to the side somewhere. And here's what'll happen. Once you use that roadmap frequently, after a while you'll just know number 10 is big, 1 and 2 are kind of soft and easy, 4 is strings, 6 is a solo, 7 is a vocal, 8 is piano percussion, and you get used to using that map. If you ever wondered how we know a lot about these instruments we're playing, is because we're constantly using the roadmap or the screen or both. And you do that long enough, when you're playing a song and you want to switch to another sound, you don't have to wait to press it to be surprised and go, oh, I don't like that. Okay? Now, while I was playing the first number, did you notice I used a little fun feature here called Fake It? And I'll talk about that in a second. But I also used another feature that you may or may not have noticed. When I'm using a big rhythm, you may not notice it as much, even if you're sitting right in front of the instrument. But when you're online and you're getting the sound patched through, it's going to be probably even it's going to be less noticeable. And most of us play easy play. When we put on our rhythms, you put on a rhythm, as an example, it says country rock, or if I put on Broadway, it says theater organ, whatever it is. What happens is that I put on my style setups, what happens is the easy play features automatically come on. MCS, memory, okay, and the auto basses, etc. Well, what MCS does is it takes a 3-note chord, it takes a 1-note chord and it actually plays 3 notes. So as an example, here's the best example that we like to show a lot of people. I just turn on the instrument and I'm going to put on just number 1, which is a traditional, just a rich organ sound. Now, if I don't have the easy button on, I have to play it manually. So I'd have to play the C pedal down on the floor. You hear that bass note? Okay. And then here I'd have to play a 3-note chord. So I'm in this position, I'm doing G, C, E. Okay? And then I'm going to hold the C chord down. Now when you put MCS on, okay, or the easy button, it turns on a memory, MCS, and an auto bass. It does the exact same thing with one finger. So essentially, when you're playing one note with the easy button, when you turn on a rhythm, the easy play features automatically turn on. It turns on the MCS, the memory, and the auto bass for you. So when you're playing that one note, essentially it's playing 3-note chord, and I know you probably already know that. And it puts it in the correct, what we call inversion or position that is ideal, the most ideal. Everybody will have probably a different opinion on that, but that's the most ideal. So again, manually, and I'm playing the C pedal on the bottom. with one finger, as you can see, it's playing the same thing. Now, what Lowry did, for some of you who have this, and I'm answering this question because I got a few emails on this actually. I had, what's the difference between this, or how do I use this? They were all wrapped around the same thing, and I thought, I probably should just touch on this. Some of you have a feature called MCS Plus. Okay? Some of you have a feature called MCS Plus Plus, meaning when you put it on, something in the screen pops up and you have two of them. And then there's, for the more elite models, there's 4 or 6, options, okay? But the most common ones is called MCS Plus Jazz 2 hands and normal 2 hands. And I just want to touch on it for a moment. So for those of you who have this feature, you understand what it's doing for you. What Jazz 2 hands does is well, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to explain it. I asked a couple people, and they said, oh, it does. What it does is it does sometimes a 6 or 7 note chord with one finger. And it plays what's called a 6 something 9 flat, some weird thing. But here's the beauty of it. I've never been able to play those chords. But now here's the normal C chord. Now watch what happens when I press Jazz 2 hands, or the MCS Plus for Jazz 2 hands. So you could hear the difference, I think, hopefully through being online here. And what it does is because I'm playing one note chord, it's playing an actual 6 note chord. And there's a 6 and I think a 9 in there or something like that. It gets pretty complicated. The beauty of that chord is that you don't have to know. It does it automatically for you. And here's the beauty of this as well. What if you're a 3-finger player? If you're a 3-finger player, it'll do the same thing. So it just knows. So watch. 1 finger. Now with MCS Plus. Now I'm going to do 3-finger with MCS Plus. And so if you notice, it does it exactly the same. So the moral of the story is you don't have to change the way you're playing for that MCS Plus feature to work for you. Now take it a step further. Some of you may have a normal 2 hands. And normal 2 hands, Joni, what was the normal 2 hands again? She was telling me this morning.
Sorry, it stacks or doubles the notes of the chord.
Okay, so whatever chord I'm playing, if I'm playing, it doesn't matter how I'm playing. Let's say I'm doing a 1-note C chord, it's doing G, C, E. It's going to do another G, C, E. I call it a stack chord. So now here's, and let me do it with just a C. So it's playing at least a 6-note chord. Very pretty. Now, in case you're wondering, I said 6-note chord on the other. The notes are different. Listen carefully. Here's normal 2 hands. Actually, let me turn it off. Here's just your normal 1-finger chord. Here's normal 2 hands. And here's Jazz 2 hands. A little bit different flavor there. And the beauty of this is that whatever you're using, like if I put on strings, here's my typical C or F chord as an example. Now watch what happens when I put Jazz 2 hands. So a song like this, what I'll do a lot is I'll play something like this, and in the middle of the song, I'll turn on the Jazz 2 hands. Listen. Now this is with just your normal MCS. then I bring in the jazz two hands. Now, the most common question we get is, when do we use the MCS Plus if I have that feature? And you probably know what the answer is going to be. And the answer is whenever you feel like it. Whenever you just want. There is no right or wrong. Okay? Sometimes I think I have it down pat, like, I'll play the song, and then when I get here, I'll put on MCS Plus, and when I get here, I turn it off. And then what I notice is I don't ever do it that way when I'm playing. I just decide, oh, now's the time to turn that feature on. So there is no right or wrong. Now, while I was playing earlier, and I was going through some of the setups, before I go on to the last topic, are there any questions about anything that I just talked about? None whatsoever? Okay.
I don't see anybody raising their hand.
We have Carol Clifford. You don't look like Carol. You look like Clive. Go ahead.
Just when you're talking about the Johnny two hands and going to the screen, what's going on the screen? Because I can't really see it.
Okay, say the question again.
When you go to what you call Johnny two hands, is it Johnny two hands? Johnny two hands. You touch something on the screen when you went to the.
So in the screen, it's hard to see it on the screen, but
Yeah.
let me just see if I can pull it up here.
Wonder what it says.
This is a Rialto, so it gives me the curtains. Let me change the back. You can change the background of the screen, by the way. Sometimes it'd probably be helpful. I'm going to go to screen, and then I'm going to pick. That one didn't work. That seemed like it made it worse. That's a pretty background over here, though. Let me see, silver.
That's better.
Let's see what happens. I forget all these little backgrounds. Okay, well, you could probably see something on the screen, but when I turn the MCS Plus, when you turn on, you all have the MCS, it's just automatic when you put on the easy button or the style. When I press MCS Plus on the screen, it'll give me one or two options depending on the model that you're playing on. In this case, because I'm on the Rialto, it actually shows jazz two hands or normal two hands. In fact, I might stand corrected on that. I believe the Inspire is that, Joni, maybe you can help me out on this. The Inspire does not pull up the screen, correct?
Tell me, even though you've got an Inspire.
We've got an Inspire.
Okay.
No, because there's no choices except the one.
Okay, so I'm glad you asked this question because I stand corrected. Technically, so on the Inspire, you have jazz two hands on the MCS Plus. Because there's only just one, there's no reason for the screen to have to come up. So when you push the MCS Plus button on, you automatically get the jazz two hands.
Okay.
All right?
Excellent.
The screen will populate more information on the Rialtos and the X's because there's more than one option. So I know on the Marquis and the Aria, there's 4 or 6 options. So if you touch MCS Plus, it'll give you the 6 options. The Rialto gives you the 2. So in this case, when I press it, those 2 come up. Thank you for asking that.
Thank
So
you.
I can give you good, correct information. All right. Any other questions?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. So the famous Fake It button. The famous Fake It button. I say the Fake It button can be your great friend depending on what you use it for and how you use it. I tend to use it for styles of music like I did the Wabash brass style. Oops, I accidentally turned on a bass pedal down here. Sorry about that. I use it for something fast, and sometimes I tend to do it a lot with bluesy, jazzy kind of styles. They tend to be easier for that. I very rarely, as a personal preference, use it on a waltz. I very rarely use it on a soft and easy. Now, there is a way to use it for those styles depending on your model, but for the most part, I like to use it on jazzier, slower, kind of bluesy kind of a styles. And here's how I like to use it. And then I'll show you how I did it with the Wabash Brass. Now here's a style that I'm going to pull up called Nolan's Pianist. And if you have the keypad here, this comes in handy because then you can just type in N, go right to your style list, and there it is, Nolan's Pianist. I've done this a few times in concert, and I've always had people say, what style did you use? And this is a style called Nolan's Pianist. Most of you have it. I think almost all of you have it. I know for sure on the Journey. I'm not sure on the Fanfare, but there's other styles that are very similar in nature. So here is the style, what it normally comes up with. If you're using just style setup, it comes up with just a rhythm. Just a piano and without the drummer and all the rest of the band. But a lot of times what I like to do is go to number 10 or vintage 10. So where you have the band, and then what I'll get is a piano and this clarinet. And then for this song, I'm going to speed it up to, let's see what happens at 110. So here's what I normally would do is, and I've seen this a lot, we play along with, you play the song like this. Okay, and you would play the song. So the beauty of this is that if you have your music and you're using music, the best way to use Fake It is to play your song as you normally would, and then maybe go back and repeat the song with the Fake It button and just play the chords and use the Fake It how it works on your instrument. Now, there are 3 different ways. You have the one way whereas you can actually play and tap out the notes, and it doesn't matter which note you hit. A wrong note is fine because Fake It puts in the correct note. 2, you notice probably at one time I held the note, so some of the models have that option. And then there's some of you have where you can push the 2 together and it'll do it automatically. Now I'll do it all 3 ways so you could see this. And I'll pretend like I'm just finishing that song and I'm going back and playing it through with the Fake It. So here we go. Okay, now I'm going to turn on Fake It. And I'm going to tap out the notes first. Now, if I hold down a black note, some of the models have it to where you can just hold it. And then some of you may have the option where you hit the 2 together. So now you probably know that a lot of the times when we're doing this fancy solo, it's probably not really us. It's probably the Fake It button. So now, if you have the Fake It, remember it turns both keyboards in. You could actually do something like this. Or if you can hold it down, or So there are many different ways. The best way to use it, I have found, is when you're playing a song and you go back and you play that song, turn on the Fake It, and just play the chords as best in time as you can. Even if you miss a measure, I don't think it matters. Okay? Or add a measure for that matter, as long as you're tapping it out. And sometimes it could be for a part of the song, and then go and then turn it off and then repeat the song. And when we're done here today, I'm going to demonstrate this feature with a couple songs so you could see it. Earlier I featured it with a style called Wabash Brass. Let's see, which was kind of like this. And what I did is I purposely played what I call like a string fiddle solo manually. And that looks fancy there. You know, we try to teach a lot of people that if you're doing that, just hit a C chord and then play a C note, a C chord broken up. So in this case, I have a C chord. I'm going to play E, G, C as rapidly as I can. Okay? But if you can't do that, put on the Fake It button and just take 2 notes and play them as fast as you can. Or if you have the Fake It Plus, or auto Fake It. So you can use that feature more often than you think. Now, I mentioned earlier I don't typically use it with soft and easies or waltzes because if you're using it manually, it's almost a little trickier to take a real pretty style and do the Fake It feature in. However, if you have the auto Fake It features, Bill Curry programmed it so if you do use it, it'll play the notes that work well with that. So it's just something to keep in mind. Now what I'm going to do before I finish up the class, I am going to finish up with a song or two, and I'll use the Fake It button. And I'll let you see it in different ways. And then I got a little trick for you on that Nollins Pianist, something that I learned from Paul Schaub once. And I thought, that's clever, and I use it all the time now. So before I do, I'm going to play 2 or 3 quick little songs, and I'll incorporate the Fake It. Do we have any questions before I move on? Any questions at all?
I don't see any hands raised.
How do I do that?
How do you do that?
Robert.
You raise your hand, or you just wave your hand, or you go, hey, Robert.
Hey, Robert.
Yeah, who's that? Let me see.
It's Joan. From the very beginning of this lesson, where do I find Dixieland on a fanfare?
Joni, do you know the answer to that one? I don't have a fanfare journey here.
Not off the top of my head, but I can get it for you.
Okay, where's your home store? Is it Joan?
Well, it's Joan. It's Joan Dixon. It used to be in Bonita, but I think now I have to, I think maybe I don't know, Port Charlotte.
Myra.
Yeah.
Call Myra on that question. I think, don't quote me on this, but call Myra. Myra, are you on? There she is on the screen. Myra, will you get with
Yes,
Myra?
I'm on.
Okay,
I'm on.
Myra, you have homework to do. But
Okay.
here's my answer for now, I think. If it's not in your rhythm styles, you may have to do what's called a backdoor way of getting to that Dixieland style. And I'm going to leave
thank
Myra
you.
with that because I think Myra knows what I'm talking about. I just don't want to
Okay.
say it on here because I might be wrong. I want to, if I had a fanfare here, I would do that. But So that's a great question, Joan. And if Myra can't find it, she has a few Dixieland buttons for sale. She could sell you one.
I'm sure she does.
Those buttons are very expensive. Sometimes there's so much money they even throw in an organ with it. No,
They do.
There's
They
got to be
do.
a workaround on it if we don't have it, because Dixieland, there's other styles that are very similar in nature, but if it's not within your group twos or something like that with the styles, if it's anywhere, it's going to be in the group two list of styles, and if it's not there, there might be a Charleston there in its place or an alternative one. Because there's a few different types of Dixieland styles. Or in the same family. Charleston is a great style. There's one called Razzmatazz, and then there's actually one called just Dixieland, which is a lot of fun. So I'm not going to go any further because now we have to make Myra do some work. She'll have to
That's
work
right.
for you.
Sorry, Myra.
Go to work,
That's all
Myra.
right. I look forward to it.
We got to keep them busy. I can't give away all
That's
the
right.
goodies here. All right. Well, good question. Any others?
Thank you.
Judith. Do you prefer Judy or Judith?
Judy.
That's what I thought.
When I had a fanfare, I had a list of hidden rhythms. Is there a list of hidden rhythms for the journey?
Oh,
Yes and no. Here's why I say that. It's because it's a lot of those was not even just hidden rhythms. What it was a song setup. So if you put on a song setup, for example, for Moonlight Serenade, or whatever, I don't know what songs off the top of my head, it may pull up a style that normally doesn't exist on the panel, and that's how you would get it. Well, on the journey, a lot of those styles and then some are on the dash. So it made it somewhat unnecessary. However, the song setup list still works the same. So it'll just show you that if I put on Mr. Sandman, for example, it'll pull up a style called Sandyman, whereas before that style may not be on the panel. Well, now it actually is, and then some. Good questions. You're making me think.
It looks like we have a question from Julia's iPad. Hi, Julia.
Julia's iPad. Go ahead, Julia's iPad.
Julia, can you unmute yourself?
Okay. Well, you can do it in the chat, or wait, there she is.
There she is.
There's Julia's iPad. Is your last name iPad? Really? That's great.
No, it's me. I'm phoning in from England. So are you going to do any more lessons on the EY instruments? Because Joni gave us a long talk last year about the right-hand side.
Yes, we're going to do it all the time, but I'll do that in a couple of my announcements. I'll mention it's a good question, and then I'll play a couple songs for you. So, wait, hold that thought, because in my announcements we'll answer that question. I'll do one more question from Amy. Amy's iPhone. That's amazing. Julia's last name is iPad, and Amy's last name is iPhone. Go ahead, Amy. Unmute yourself. Amy. There you
Okay,
go.
do you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I was gonna ask the same question that this lady just asked you. Are you gonna still discuss other features from this EY series?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let me do some announcements then, and that'll answer both of your questions together. So, and then I'll play a couple songs using that Fake It feature, and I got to show you that little trick I learned from Paul Schaub. So, we are in the process of working on our website to where all the classes are going to be on the website. And what'll happen is instead of having to rely on the emails, and they'll have the dates and stuff on there. So whenever that class comes about, all you have to do is go to our website and click on it, and then it should take you right through. Okay? Now, Right now, that's what we're going to do. At some point, we may or may not require a password, but because this is all new to us, what we're trying to do is make it as easy as possible for you to get on, okay? Having said that, I've given the person in charge of the website, I've given him, I want to say 6, maybe 7 categories of instruments right now. I have easy with SD owners welcomed, SD with easy owners welcome. There's a reason for that because of their similarities. I have the EY series, which also means EX owners are welcome because of the similarities. And then I have EX, where if you have a Rialto Inspire, and this is all going to be on the website. And I have 7 different groups of types of classes depending on the models. And all you'll have to do, in each month, right now, I'm thinking once a month. I don't know, maybe twice a month, because some of the organs, they overlap. So, like, for example, today we had someone with an aria that was asking questions that was very, very relevant. So you'll notice that some of the series that we have, you can come to one or both because you'll still learn something from it. Even if you came to one of the easy series classes, if you had a fanfare and came to an easy series class, as an example, there's a lot of that is applicable. So, and as we go on, this is not going to be something we're just going to stop. You know, we adjust to the times. We may have other workshops that we do. Like I've had a few people say, well, now's a good time to teach that learn how to memorize a song workshop that you did once. Not everybody's done that. I actually have one of our clinicians once upon a time had learn how to play the blues. And he has a little thing that we have an overlay, and I'm thinking of getting that and teaching people how to do it. So we'll have other things, but ultimately, all of this is going to be on the website. And my goal is by July 1st at the latest is to have it live so that you can go on and you'll be able to see when it's happening and you can check your calendar. Now, it doesn't mean I'm just going to stop doing the emails. I'm going to do that over time so that nobody misses a beat, okay? Just right now what I'm doing is I'm sending an email almost every day for something different. And I want to streamline that a little bit to where you get important emails and then you know what classes are going on based on, you know, what we have on the website, okay? So hopefully that answered your question. That was a long way of saying yes. All right. Now, before I go on, I'm playing this next number. I'm gonna use the Fake It feature here in a couple different ways. Now I'm gonna go back to Nolan's Pianist, and the song I'm gonna play is Just a Closer Walk with Thee. All right, so you see how it started there, and I'm gonna put it at I think 110 seemed pretty good. And here's a little trick I learned from Paul Schaub, actually. Some of you may have met him in his travels through Florida and Arizona. He was a Lowry touring artist for many years. He wrote some of the manuals. I believe he even wrote our SD manuals, if I'm not mistaken. But he's written a lot of manuals. He's known as the professor at Lowry because he's great at education and teaching. And I saw him do, when we rolled out one of the instruments once, he demonstrated this feature, and I thought, that's cool. And every now and then, a song or two that I do, I'll do it this way. So what he'll do is he'll put on the Fake It before he plays the song. A lot of times we play the song, and then in the middle or repeat the song, we go and do Fake It. What he did was something a little clever. The trick to this is get the instrument set up the way you want it. Okay, so that's the C chord, and the song I'm going to play. It's very important that you play that chord in the song first before you play the actual song. Okay, so that's a C chord. I've got my intro set up. Everything's ready to go. Okay, now here's what I'm going to do. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to have my Fake It button on before I play the song. I'm going to use the Fake It feature as an introduction. And I've seen this happen with real bands. A lot of times the clarinet will come out and person playing the clarinet, and he'll do a little something, and then the band kicks in. So something like this. The trick to this is make sure you press the first chord on the song first. Okay, get it set up, stop it, leave it there, and then you can do something like this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So that was, if you noticed, I used it a few different ways. I did it manually, or I did it where I tapped it out. I actually played the notes manually a few times, so you could see that. And then I did the auto fake it, and then I turned them both on together. So I wanted you to see all different ways. If you also notice, when I played the chords, I played 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger, and I interchanged it as I was doing it. The point of all that was, regardless of the skill player you are, the type of player you are, you can get the same effect the more you use those features. I'll do one more here, and I really like the way this works on here. So I'm going to go to my keypad. I'm going to type in D, stylist, go to that Dixieland because I love the Dixieland's Fake It. Here we go. Now actually, we'll do that same thing I did earlier. I put on the Fake It first. I have the F chord started already. Let's see. We got a trumpet here, so let's see what happens. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So that was, I used it. It's very similar in both of those. And if you have any questions about anything we've talked about today, it's very important that you reach out to your personal assistant. If you don't know who your personal assistant, email me and I will make sure to have someone get in touch with you. We have some store areas where we no longer have a location, but we have salespeople and personal assistants all across the nation that'll be there to help. Actually, I had Sean Maloney helping out a student in Palm Coast, and he's in Mesa, Arizona. So reach out to your stores, and we could tell you about that. And by the way, as a little extra, I don't know if you caught it at the end there, but one of our classes recently, we talked about transposing, and I used that little technique there. So I don't know if you caught on to that. So with that being said, I want to say thank you so much for attending today. We hope you enjoyed. Again, if you have any questions, reach out to your local staff members. With that said, I'm going to stay on just for a minute or two. If you have anything you'd like to say on your way out, I'll be here until my body says I have to go potty. So there you have it. Thank you so much.
Good class.
Hey there, Robert. This is the best thing that's happened during pandemic for Fletcher.
It is.
Well, good.
Very good.
Well, I hope you're taking notes because we're going to quiz you.
Get it.
Come to California anytime.
I'll put it up on the YouTube tonight.
Great class, Robert.
Thank you so much. Oh, I got to do my final goodbye like this.